I want to go to Peter Tatchell. Now, there are few more redoubtable, indefatigable campaigners, almost always for the right causes, than Peter Tatchell. I happen to think he's barking up the wrong tree, though, as the founder of the Protest the Pope campaign. He's presenting a documentary for Channel 4 called The Trouble with the Pope at 8 p.m. on Monday. He's met with the Archbishop of Southwark, and he's planning various demonstrations to protest against the Pope's state-paid visit. But I'll tell you this, Peter never shirks an argument. That's why he's here. Peter, welcome to the show.
Good evening, George.
Good evening. Sorry to keep you up late. I know you like an early night. Peter, first of all, summarise for us just exactly what you've got against this papal visit.
Well, there's lots of different strands, but one of them is that we don't think it should be a state visit. We don't think he should be honoured with a state visit, given his often very harsh, intolerant views on major social issues like women's rights, gay equality, and the use of condoms to prevent the spread of HIV. But we also don't really think that he should be recognised as a head of state, because heads of state are usually leaders of countries. The Vatican is not a country, it's not recognised as a country by the United Nations, and therefore he's really sort of not a genuine head of state. So that's one issue. The second one is about the cost and the fact that the British taxpayer is being asked to pay for part of the visit. And we don't think that any part of the visit should be paid for by the taxpayer because, first of all, we the taxpayers weren't asked. Secondly, we're in a period of financial austerity, and we'd rather, this money be put towards stopping some of the public spending cuts that the government is contemplating. And we just think it's wrong in principle. Britain does not give paid visits to the Grand Mufti of Mecca or the Chief Rabbi of Jerusalem. So why should the Pope's visit be given this special, unique financial privilege?
Well, the Vatican is, of course, a state, and our head of state invited him. And if our head of state invites another head of state, our state has to pay for it. That's the norm in diplomatic relations in the country. And if we only invite to have state visits those leaders who agree with you and me on the whole panoply of social policies, not that we agree on all of those in any case, there'll not be many state visits. Now, maybe that's a good thing, but we can't really run the rule over people's attitude to women's rights before we decide that we want to have relations with their state, can we?
Well, I think it goes back to the issue, this whole head of state issue and whether he should have been invited and given this honour. I think the point is the Catholic Church is perfectly entitled to invite him here, but if it does, it should fund it. I think it's very unfair that the Pope gets a state visit paid for in part by the taxpayer, whereas other religious leaders who, in my opinion, are just as seeking to be just as moral as the Pope, they're denied any funding or any state visit. And I think that's discrimination between religions, and I think it's very offensive to non-Catholics of whatever faith or not they may be.
Well, but deal with my other point, that his views can't be the rubric against which we measure state visits. The Chinese president was invited here because it's important that Britain has good relations with the state of China, even though you and I would disagree with many of his attitudes and views.
Well, I must admit I'm a bit of a purist. I would not give a state visit to any human rights abuser. I would not put economics before human rights in the way that Britain does with its relations with Saudi Arabia, where King Abdullah, an absolute dictator, a tyrant, his government is guilty of many, many, many human rights abuses. He was given a state visit 2 years ago, and I don't think he should have. And the reason we gave him a state visit was because we buy his oil and we sell him guns and planes. It's a sordid commercial transaction. Now, obviously, the Pope is not in that kind of league, but I do think that when he says that no woman on this planet is fit to be a priest, that no woman has the moral capability to be a priest, that is profoundly offensive to half of humanity.
Yeah, but it's also a tenet of the religion which is followed by 800 million people around the world, and many millions of people in our own country who are taxpayers. and they have the right to see the Pope. He's been invited by our head of state, and therefore we must pay for it. But let me ask you...
Can I say, we're not calling for him to be banned. In fact, I've said I defend the Pope's right to come here and to express his opinions. But I also defend the right of other people to protest against him.
Sure, but that's what I want to move on to, because you can't be unmindful of the fact that a significant number of bigots in this country hate Roman Catholics, hate the Catholic Church, hate the head of the Catholic Church, whomsoever that head of the Church was. Nothing special about this Pope. Aren't you worried about the people you'll be marching with?
I don't think those people will be on this march, and certainly they're not welcome. We do not in any way endorse their views. We are not against Catholic people. We're not against the Catholic faith. We are against this particular Pope and his policies, like saying that a woman who's been raped should be banned from having an abortion, like saying that using condoms to prevent HIV increases the risk. This is the kind of obscene things that this Pope is saying.
But you say you're not against Catholics, but you're so strongly against Catholic teaching, Catholic thought, that it must be influencing you in this, if I may call it, crusade.
Well, hang on a moment. Many Catholics, in fact most Catholics in this country, disagree with the Pope's teachings on contraception, abortion, gay rights, women's equality. On all those issues, the polls that have been conducted show that a majority of Catholic opinion does not agree with the Pope. People in the Catholic Church in Britain are by and large much more compassionate, much more liberal. So to say that this is an anti-Catholic thing is to also deny their agency. You know, you've heard of the We Are Church movement.
But those people want the Pope to come. I'm sure you'd agree with that. The vast majority of Catholics in Britain will welcome the Pope with open arms.
I'm not too sure about open arms. I'm sure many of them will welcome him. But of course, as you know, the ticket sales have been very poor, and even when they're trying to give them away in some parishes, they can't. So I wouldn't say that there's a huge rush to see the Pope, but I'm sure sizable numbers will turn out. But again, that isn't the issue. The issue is the kinds of things he advocates. You know, he says that every gay person, even if they never have sex, has an inclination ordered towards a more or less strong intrinsic evil. He's effectively saying that gay people possess evil. And he's also argued against gay equal rights. He said that discrimination against gay people, particularly in the youth service, education, and the military, can be justified to keep homosexuals away from young people. This is like Dark Ages stuff.
But this is the official view of virtually every religion. You're just against religion.
No, lots of people in all faiths disagree with fundamentalist interpretations like that of the Pope. They would like to see a more liberal, progressive, inclusive church. They would like to be able to see the fact that scientists can use a bundle of cells, which is technically an embryo, to research to try and find cures for major diseases. But the Pope says that that is wrong and it should be banned by law. The Pope says that this kind of research is, Frankenstein and must be stopped. Well, I agree in having controls over scientific research, but it's very, very clear from the stem cell researchers that I've met that they are motivated by a love and compassion and a desire to use science to prevent disease and save people from suffering. And for the Pope to oppose that seems to me to be going against the basic fundamental Christian gospel of love and compassion.
What form is your protest going to take? Are you going to try and do as you did once before with Church of England clergy and actually get up close and personal?
The Protest the Pope campaign has said right from the outset that our protests will be lawful and peaceful. We've never planned any disruptions, but we're just going to use a religious metaphor, bear witness for people who stand for equality and human rights, universal equality and human rights. And that includes respecting women and acknowledging them that they do, if they so choose, have the capacity to be priests and clergy. And to exclude them is an insult to the whole female sex.
Okay, Peter, thanks very much indeed.